Welcome back to Building a Fighter. My name is Dr. Austin Shane, sports chiropractor in Scottsdale, Arizona. With me, as always, badass strength coach in Denver, Colorado, Alex Friedman.
Yo, yo, yo.
What up, dude? Today, we're going to be talking about common things we see that are deficiencies in combat sports athletes. So, Alex, we're starting with broad topics and then we'll fine tune our way in. What's our first broad topic that we see in
Yeah, I
combat
mean, I
sports
think
deficiencies?
the one that we both kind of started off in, or that we have our like really roots tied down to, is like physical deficiencies, right? Like we are assessing movement, we're watching strength and conditioning, we watch the guys with their technique and their postures as they're going through some of their tactical practices too. But like I think that's the low hanging fruit, right? The physical deficiencies. Everybody wants to be training harder, everybody wants to be training better. So it's like we're gonna drop some like three nuggets that say here is how you move better and make the exercises you're doing more effective and more worth your time, right?
100%. And I think the perfect place to start is where almost all movement starts. That's going to be the foot and ankle joint. I think the foot and ankle joint is one of the highest payoff places to focus your accessory work for an MMA athlete or any combat athlete. And to me, one of the biggest reasons is for MMA, you compete barefoot. So why aren't we trying to strengthen up our intrinsic structures of the bottom of our foot? Why aren't we trying to free up range of motion so the foot works the way it's supposed to? Why aren't we trying to stabilize the ankle so that we can get a better base that we can pivot around when we're striking, right? All of these things are very key reasons for why you should be adding in foot and ankle stability work. And I want to mention, foot and ankle stability work doesn't mean just fucking standing on a Bosu ball.
I could just balance though, right?
I mean, it's a good place to start. It's a good place to literally, like, if you're deconditioned or if you're rehabbing from an injury, there's a place for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how you train it. That's not how you bulletproof it, which is what I like to
Gotcha.
talk about it.
So we progress from standing and balancing on the Bosu ball to back squatting on the Bosu
Yes,
ball.
with one Bosu ball under each foot, it needs to be flipped upside down, and you need a minimum of 225 pounds on your back.
Fuck yeah, dude. All right, I did those yesterday, so that's
Mm-hmm.
great. Great news, great news. But no, I totally agree, and I think you rattled off a lot of performance benefits, which is kind of ironic coming from you. But like that is going to
Hey,
stabilize.
I do the performance thing too, Dick.
I know, but it's just not your main wheelhouse. But I mean, it's going to bulletproof injuries up the chain, right? It's not just going to give us a lot of these performance benefits, which is I'm all on deck for, right? Don't get me wrong, but we're I don't want to say like preventing run injuries, but we're limiting our risk factors, right? And just
Or
having the
mitigating.
ability to be stable and solid and structural in any position, and you're going to find yourself in a lot of vicarious positions in MMA,
Mhm.
right? To be robust to those positions is something we can work on.
100%. I mean, the word bulletproof is not necessarily true, right? I like to use that word because it's a sexy word when you're doing mobility work,
Dude,
right? Or
I'm
it's a sexy
bulletproof.
word when you're doing any
Don't
sort of
rain on my
training
parade,
for a
dude.
joint. But you can't bulletproof a joint. You can't completely take away the risk of injury, but you can set yourself up for success. You can decrease the risk that you have 100%. So what we can do is we can do these different foot and ankle stability exercises, or we can add in different variations or constraints to train certain things, right? Easy example. If you're having athletes do a lower body conditioning wall sit, for example, for isometric strength of the lower body, why don't we just go up on a big toe and pinky toe and we're going to do a heels elevated wall sit? Fantastic way to train isometric plantar flexion, which is a position that is going to increase the stability of our ankle while at the exact same time training for all of the different variables that are at play for the endurance side of that isometric movement.
No, I love it, right? I think to play off of that, a lot of the simple things we can do is when we're in the weight room, go barefoot,
Yeah,
right? I mean, like
love it.
that should be common practice, right? In my playbook or whatever, right? Especially when we get into like unilateral stuff, right? I'm such a big fan of like a back step lunge or a rear foot elevated split squat without shoes on, right? It forces you to be stable, because if you're not stable, it's that old adage, you can't shoot a cannon from a canoe. If you're not stable, we're not lifting any weight, right? And so that's like, it really hits the prerequisite home of, okay, we have to figure out how to be stable in the foot. And then hopefully you watch your athlete fall over 2 or 3 times. You're like, hey, here's how you stabilize your foot. Because I don't know about your experience, Austin, but I've had so many guys look at me so disinterested when I talk about foot stability and how to grip the ground, and how you actually create that within your foot. And then they go to do their like split squats and they're like falling over the place. Like, holy shit. I was like, no, how about we use that stuff? Right. So I think it's better to hit it on the back end there when you have a captive audience.
Oh, I just assault them with the information at the beginning. They don't have anywhere to hide, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that they know what the fuck I'm talking about. And they're going to be so interested in it because I'm going to make it so fucking compelling that they have to think about it while they do it. And
Oh,
they're
so
going to
you got a high charisma score, huh?
when I'm talking about these three things that we're going to be talking about, I have a very high charisma score because they're boring topics that need to be done. And if you can make them sound as sexy as possible, it's higher likelihood that your athlete's going to buy in. So, talking about foot and ankle stability, one of the other, I guess, key ways that it helps you is actually the opposite of what I talked about before, where we're doing a lot of plantar flexion and that heels elevated wall sit. Adding in dorsiflexion, or adding in the ability to do that quote unquote rock over step or that duck walk, decreases our likelihood of hurting our knee through the different exchanges. So think about grappling, for example. Think about, we're going to take a wrestling shot. As we do our rock over step or our penetration step, we need to get to a certain level of dorsiflexion, or trying to, if it's open chain, bring your toes towards your nose, or if your knees going over your toes, if you follow knees over toes guy. If you don't have adequate levels, that movement has to be achieved somewhere. And we know this doesn't necessarily cause immediate injury, but we do know the ankle is supposed to have a certain amount of range of motion. If it doesn't have a certain amount of range of motion, your brain only cares about goals. It doesn't care about the individual movements. So it's going to accomplish the task at hand. It's very task oriented. So you're going to take that shot, whether that ankle can handle it or not. Well, what does that mean? Either down the chain, so big toe typically, or up the chain, the fucking knee, which is most likely the one that's going to get hurt, is going to have to take the brunt of the force. You ever see somebody that hits like a penetration step and their knee just smacks the fuck out of the mat and they have zero control? A lot of the times there's two main causes for this. The first cause I've seen is that they're not muscularly conditioned. They don't have the muscular endurance, or I guess really the strength, I would say, to be able to get into that position and control it. So, or number two, which is just as important, they don't have the requisite mobility to be able to get into that dorsiflexed position. So they end up smacking the shit out of their knee because they have to fall fast, because they have their end range faster. And then they don't have the ability to slowly, gradually get down to the mat because they have 10 degrees of dorsiflexion. We're supposed to have 25 to 30.
Right. So I totally agree with you. I see this all the time. I see guys work around it constantly. And I've also seen a lot of guys really pour heavily into like this half kneeling position where they're 6 inches away from the wall and they're just trying to hit their knee on the wall. So what are better ways to develop that dorsiflexion or create that range of motion than just like, hitting 50, like half kneeling dorsiflexsions to the wall?
Increase the load with which you're doing the exercise. This is where, like, knees over toe guy isn't a genius, right? He's not the end all be all. He's not the panacea of performance. I hate to break it to anybody that's on his
He's
programs.
got
They're
cool
fine.
YouTube videos though.
He does. He's the best marketer in the fitness game. That is what I call him. And he saw a need and he filled it, which kudos to him. He's making way more fucking money than I am. But it is very important to increase the load through these exercises to increase dorsiflexion. And that's what he does so well. That's literally the basis for his program, is knees over toes, which is just dorsiflexion. So maybe you're doing a knees over toes split squat. Maybe you're doing a reverse sled drag, which forces you to get into that increased dorsiflex position every time you take a step backwards. Maybe you're doing a walking backwards on a treadmill. You can do a back squat to full depth, a safety squat to full depth. Any exercise that allows you to decrease, or I guess increase, but decrease your depth, get to the bottom of the full range, and you get to feel it in the ankle, that's going to be a progressively overloadable position that we can get better at. Now, you don't want to start necessarily flat ground. A lot of people do have rigid ankles based off the footwear that we wear, and that's popular in day to day right now. So what you can do is you can start with whether it's a cyclist squat or just a regular like 5 to 10 degree heel lift. You try to get to the full range of motion of the squat. Then you do that for a training cycle, maybe 4 to 6 to maybe 8 weeks. Then you decrease that heel lift to flat ground. Boom. Then maybe you do a toe elevated squat, which is hard as shit. I don't know if anybody's tried it. That's one of my favorite ways to squat because I'm weirdly mobile, but and it allows me to feel that range of motion a little bit better. But that's one of my favorite ways to increase dorsiflexion in the actual long run is load the position, get to the point of maximal end range of dorsiflexion, and then you can play with the variables, whether it's load, tempo, or reps to increase your body's ability to adapt to that stimulus.
Well put, my friend. The last thing I want to say about ankle stability, because we got a lot of things on this list here that I think we need to
I
chug
know we
through.
talked way too much about ankles.
Right. The last thing I think that is really important that we put into our mixed martial arts training is single leg plyometrics.
Yes,
Right.
100%.
To progress all of the mobility and stability that we've created within the ankle and foot. Now let's put it in a dynamic context, right? 3-dimensional plane, single leg hops. Like I've been killing guys with just a single leg hop and stick. It's like, can you land efficiently on one leg? And the answer for almost all these guys is no. Right. So let's figure out how to do that and get them really efficient at it in a muscular context. That way we can hopefully progress into a neural context. And then we aren't, fucking shit up, to put it frankly.
Yeah.
Right. So I think single leg plyometrics are really big, doing it in a 3-dimensional way and make sure you progress
Intensive and extensive as well.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So
and
intensive is intensity, extensive is going to be endurance.
Yeah. And progress them appropriately. All right. We're not jumping into straight like a single leg box jump or a, I don't know, half kneeling or a split squat with a jump or some shit. Just land on one foot. Just start there. See if we can do that.
Depth drop to 1 foot. Anyways, moving on. What do we got?
Our next one is scapulo-thoracic range of motion.
A lot of words for
that
your
sounds
shoulder
like a
blade.
doctor. It sounds like a doctor to explain that one.
Yes, it is. No, it's your shoulder blade. It needs to move. That's it.
Done.
No, you need to be able to move your shoulder blade in a way that is beneficial. My favorite example of what shoulder blade movement should look like is the 135 champ right now, Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley has what I would consider to be optimal scapulo-thoracic mobility. It's able to move forward on the rib cage, but stay connected, not necessarily flare off. It's able to retract. It's able to go up, down, left, right, pivot a little bit. It does it all, but it has the stable surface of it's not lifting up off of the rib cage as it's doing all of this. Its serratus posterior and anterior muscles are he's extremely well trained through those muscles to be able to increase surface area. It's extremely important that we start to train this, and it's actually easy to train. It just takes somebody with an eye to watch it. That's why, like, I do have some athletes that I ask them to train without a shirt on or wear a tank top so that I can see the shoulder blade move in real time.
Yep.
Guys that are like, I see it a lot with like compacted wrestlers. Their shoulder blades don't move, right?
They're locked in. Yep.
They're locked the fuck in. They don't move. And part of that is what causes them to look so blocky when they strike. It's because they can't get into that protracted state to where they can add that extra inch or two onto their punch, and it makes them look like a rock'em sock'em robot.
Yeah, 100%. Where I look for this the most is a lot of our like pressing and pulling motions, right? Obviously using the shoulder blade and the scapula, but this is why, again, I'm not a big fan of like a floor press or barbell bench press with our fighters, because a huge amount of that technique is built upon locking the scapula in and getting as strong and stable as possible, right? Which is somewhat the opposite of our goal. Some people, again, in the right context, need that. But what I love is like an open, freely mobile scapula when pressing, like landmine, single arm presses. I love TRX rows for this. I love a lot. I can see it a little bit in the dumbbell bench press. That's maybe a little better variation for me on the bench press. Push-ups is a huge one, right? Push-ups are so big that you can blow somebody's mind by asking them to move their shoulders through the range of motion of a push-up, which is you see so many god awful push-ups out there. So if you need to look at this, you can see it through a lot of pressing and pulling motions. I found a lot of ease in teaching it like on a TRX row, because it's kind of easy just to like hang out there and let your shoulders protract kind of correctly, and then we can activate them as we go. The biggest thing I said the biggest thing like 4 times now, but another thing I look at is often guys are good at retraction and elevation.
Yes.
People are not very good at protraction and depression, right? And a lot of the upward rotation we nix as well, just because we elevate into it. But look at the shoulder blade. There should not be a gap between the spine and the shoulder blade. Like, just because we're training retraction doesn't mean that we need to like pull the shoulder blade off the rib cage, as Austin's saying. So I see that overshadowing a lot of our like actual compacting and like centrated shoulder joint.
Yeah. One of my favorite ways to help teach this concept is actually a dumbbell incline bench.
Yeah.
That depression concept that we talked about, that's a fantastic way to do that if, say, you don't have a landmine, or say you're sick of using a landmine, because I use it a lot and it gets boring to do that for 3 straight training cycles, right? And sometimes it's fine if the athlete's getting bored, but sometimes they start to lose interest and you got to switch up the stimulus.
Yeah.
Boom. Dumbbell incline press. It forces them to be able to depress their shoulder blade in a way that's beneficial. We're training those small muscles to help bring the shoulder blade down, but stay on the rib cage, because there's the physical actual limitation of the bench behind
you
me.
get feedback from it.
It's just another constraint of exercise. So it's something that's going to put him in the right position unconsciously, if you will.
Yep.
And then it forces them to press through that movement and try to stay depressed, if that's the cue I'm going to use, while they go through that movement, right? Fantastic way to train it. Now, well, something I want to talk about is, why is it so important to keep the rib cage and the shoulder blade connected? It's a concept that we know isn't terrible, scapular winging, but it isn't optimal, right? We know it's not necessarily going to lead to injury. It's not an increased injury risk, but it's not optimal for muscle performance and being able to add power onto our punches. And B, it fucking looks terrible. Like, not that it's about the looks, but it does. You ever see somebody do a push-up and you can fit a literal fist underneath their shoulder blade in their rib cage? I'm like, oh, that looks like you're a fucking Skeletor. Like, that just looks wrong. And while we know that there's not 100% a direct correlation between shoulder injury and scapular winging, this is an assessment that I do to help pick up on movement, quote unquote, faults, right? We know that everybody moves differently. But we also know that while there is no perfect movement, there are movements that we would consider are optimal. And the reason they're optimal is because when a shoulder blade is on a rib cage, it's called centrated, right? It is the maximal surface area between 2 different bones with muscles pulling on them. That centration allows me to activate all of the local musculature at the highest rate possible. So the more surface area of those joints, or of those bones in the joint, the more muscle pull in each given direction with which they connect to those joints. Now, this is important when we get into striking, where think about somebody that's trying to throw a punch from a winged scapula, so to say. They no longer are able to use their depressors. They're no longer able to use their serratus anterior. They're no longer able, which is your punching muscle. That's literally the nickname for it in anatomy class. They're no longer able to use the small stabilizers that allow us to increase our rigidity to transmit the force. Yeah, you can still throw a punch with a scapular winging like effect happening. You cannot transmit the same amount of force, because at end range, when you make contact, you cannot be as stable. It's physically impossible. And that is just as, if not more important than developing the force of the punch.
Yep. 100%. You ain't knocking people out.
Pussy.
For sure. Speaking of knocking people out, the next movement or physical deficiency is closely related to the shoulder, actually. It's where I pick up on it a lot in our faults, is just purely neck strength, right? It's,
and it doesn't mean just winging on a neck harness and fucking repping out yeses and nos for 135 pounds.
Yes, it does. But no, it's like strongly correlated. Again, I don't have the scientific studies. I could go look them up. But the stronger that your neck is in an extension to flexion ratio, the less you're going to get knocked out. It's science.
Yeah, I think it was something like 1 to 3% decrease, but that's actually just got not disproven, but the numbers have switched recently. So I don't know the numbers either right now. But we know a stronger neck means you're getting knocked out less, right? A stronger neck typically means you're getting a less likely to have a risk of concussion, which
Hmm.
is one of the biggest factors in coming back after a fight, right?
Yeah.
You could break an arm, right? And it's going to heal up in X amount of time. You can break your nose, right? You could have a laceration. All those things have set healing times. We don't have a healing time for concussions. It could be literally 2 weeks to a year. There is
Yep.
no good time frame for concussion based rehab right now because the brain is a mystery. We have general timelines, but you could still like I still get concussion headaches and I haven't truly wrestled since I was 21. I'm 29 now. And I still have residual effects from my concussions. Like it's not something that we know a lot about and it's one of the biggest limiting factors of getting back into your sport that pays your fucking bills.
Yep.
So, if we have a way that can decrease that risk, we should probably fucking do it. And that thing that we can do is going to be neck strength. And we need to start it in a progressive overload format where we're not just starting with yeses and nos on a neck harness that's going to then cause disc herniations, right?
Yep.
Alex, how do we start neck
To
strength?
say, I always start with isometrics, right? I think this is the easiest way to get at the neck. And one little thing I'll harp on, and I know Austin, you'll talk on this a little bit more, but it's like we have to get in the correct position to be strong in an isometric, right? We can't just be doing neck bridges off the ground and like keeping our chin way high in the air and like arching our head back, right? That's not going to get the type of quote unquote neck strength that we're looking for, right? We want to be able to tuck the chin. We want to be able to like hold the back of our head off the ground if I'm laying flat, or we want to be able to like resist a band that's trying to pull your forehead back and like, again, put your chin way up in the air. So I do this a lot with bands. I do this a lot with partner resistance, just simply pressing on the head. I do this a little bit with like a chin tuck maneuver where you're laying on the ground. But the ability to just hold position there in, all three of your planes of motion, frontal, sagittal, and transverse, right? To be able to resist those motions in an isometric format and then eventually in an eccentric format is literally what we're training for, right? We're not creating concentric strength with our neck movements, right? Which is a harness, in itself, which again, time and place, blah, blah, blah.
Right. It's
But
not bad. It needs to be progressed to.
right. And it needs to be progressed too. And then, if we're simply going after the goal of like maximizing strength and maximizing size, then like concentric isn't the worst option to try and do that. But we're not just wrenching on it, right? Hold isometric position first and then progress into some of those more eccentric loading or concentric loading principles.
Yeah, and I want to preface everything I'm going to say with the director of performance at the UFCPI, or yeah, director of performance, no,
Mm-hmm.
head of strength conditioning, Gavin Pratt. He is one of the smartest humans I've talked to
Mm-hmm.
on neck strength. He's dedicated so many hours of his life to learning about how to strengthen the neck for combat athletes. So if you want to learn more on this topic, he is the man to talk to. And the good thing for you is we have a whole fucking podcast with him.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah,
about
dude.
half of it is talking about neck strength. So if you want to listen to us more and talk about this, that's another episode you can go to. It's Gavin Pratt's episode, but also he has a lot of published papers and different talks that he's done online talking about this. Now into my take on it. My take is exactly where Alex starts. I assault people with isometrics, and people think like, "Oh, I'm just going to push on the head in different directions," right? That's an ISO. Yes, that's a great place to start. But you know what else? You can scale pretty vastly and make it really hard. Like I'm talking 10, 15, 20-second banded isometric and holding a position. If you think that's easy, try it because it's not. I can promise you. And that's a great way to see, can this athlete withstand these different pressures? Are they squeezing their jaw too much and their fucking jaw gets tight instead of their neck, right? Are they offloading into different strategies that are suboptimal? Well, then we scale back the amount of time that they're doing that ISO and focus on the proper positioning or whatever goal you're trying to go after with your exercises. Because again, you don't want to just throw neck strength in willy nilly. You want there to be a purpose for why you're doing it. Just like that's my issue with like neck bridges for youth wrestlers.
Hmm.
There's no like, don't get me wrong. I do think a neck bridge is important. I think it's a valuable skill to have, especially in the freestyle and Greco side of wrestling. But you need to have a why for what you're doing. I'm not going to go out there and have my 6-year-old running around in a fucking neck bridge over and over and over again and expecting their neck not to hurt, right? That's just not going to happen.
Present.
Yeah, like I did it too. And it's a part of the culture. And it's something that we did that we want to learn from. We're not saying anybody was bad by choosing that. We're saying that we can learn from those situations. We have current evidence now to show that that is not the optimal way to load the neck for that age group or for that, I guess, skill level. And we can make advancements in that, right? So isometrics are where we start. Then we can move into what I like to do is going to be a little bit more of our concentric eccentric protocol, but I'm not going to do it with a neck harness and external load. I mean, it is external load, but it's not weights, right? I like to do manual resistance when it comes to my external concentric eccentric loads when we go through the beginning phases of our neck strengthening. So say I throw a towel on somebody's head. We're going to go through every range of motion. I'm going to apply manual overpressure as they go, or their partner, or whoever's working out with them. And they're going to go through that range of motion to the full range of motion with a guided resistance from a professional or from their coach or from their partner that isn't going to put them in the dust. So think about it like a 20 to 30%. And then you can scale up from there. It's a great way to gently, I guess, gradually get somebody into, you're never going to go 100%, but up to 60, 70% load as they're going through these movements. And then we can layer in all these different strategies like the neck harness or doing a lot more like concentric, eccentric loading with it. With some people like to use like the iron neck, but in a weird way. Like the iron neck's a great way to do isos, right?
Yeah.
But I've seen people fucking use the iron neck and they literally just start moving their head around all the time. And it's not really an isometric. They have the hardest band possible. They're like, this is good because it makes me sore.
Because it's hard.
And they're doing a figure 8 and just shearing their disc with the 120-pound band. Don't do that. Scale yourself up. That's the best way to strengthen those small muscles because small muscles take a lot of time to develop.
Oh, perfectly said. No, that's exactly how I would go about training the neck, right? And so I think moving on in our list, with our list of 3 deficiencies, we're going to mental deficiencies, right? So what are the big?
Terrible when you say it out loud.
You're the one that you wrote the title. God damn it!
I know, but I wrote it. I didn't ever say it.
Oh my God! So what are some problems about our psychology that we have in the MMA game, right? So what mental mistakes are we making that are holding us back and is common? Right. And I think the first one that I know, what's up?
Mental mistakes is much better.
There you go. There it is. You're going to edit that part out, right?
No.
I know. The first one that I know Austin has a rant on that he wants to go off on is trusting the process, right? How hard is it to trust the process and then just kind of keep going through the suck?
Soapbox.
Yep.
Meet Austin. A lot of MMA and combat athletes are not patient. They want an entire year of training to be done in not even an 8-week fight camp, in a 6-week fight camp. Because if you're not elite in the UFC right now, you're not even getting 8 weeks right now. You're probably getting anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks to prepare for your fight.
Mm-hmm.
And they expect that even though they were fucking off for the last 3 months, to increase their performance by 28% by doing, what would that be? Even if we're doing 2 days a week, 6 weeks, so 12 practices, 12 strength and conditioning sessions, and they expect to have a greater than 25% return.
Well, here's the thing that where I see that the most is like, I'm going to go to this new gym. I'm going to train really hard. I'm going to get so much better. Oh shit, I lost one fight. Got to go somewhere else.
You need to understand that there is a long-term aspect to training, and it's a compounding effect, just like an investment. It's compounding interest over time, and the more work you put in consistently and sticking to the process, the better you're going to get in the long run. It's not necessarily about how you are, especially if you're, where I see this the most are the 1-0 pros or the amateur fighters, where they go out there, they have a terrible fight, and they didn't do anything in the offseason really, but then they have to find something to blame. It always ends up being that they got tired because fuck, I'm in a fight. Of course you're going to get tired. And they don't understand that energy system development takes a lot of time. it is a concept that in order to build an aerobic base, you're looking, especially if you're coming from like college wrestling, where you're already a well-established athlete, where you have a robust system. Think about trying to do work on a fucking Ferrari, bro. There's a reason why it takes a long ass time to do the repairs on those cars. There's a reason why
Yep.
it takes so many different mechanics in an F1 pit to be able to work on those cars. It's because it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time, right? They literally have a 5-month period where all they do is try to develop a better car. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Now think about that every single time you do a fight, every 6 weeks, if you don't have the results you want, you get an entirely new pit crew in and try to start from scratch. That's basically what that is, right? You're starting from scratch every time
Well,
and you're
and
not what, yep.
to enhance the analogy too, and not only do you have a whole new pit crew doing a new job in there, the old pit crew is trying to break down the door and get back in too, right? Because you're not going to tell me every time I practice you get a little tired, you're going to revert back to your old habits,
100%.
right? Like that old pit crew is trying to beat the fucking door down.
Exactly.
Also.
So it's a process that takes a long amount of time, especially in our aerobic system, where a lot of fighters I've seen have a lot of struggles. So this is where we hit our zone 2 training and stay consistent with it. I
Mm-hmm.
always say starting with 1 to 2 days a week for 30 to 45 minutes and scaling our way up to those 60 to 90-minute goes, right? It doesn't need to be runs. It could be swims. It could be hitting the bag. It could be riding a bike. It could be the air bike. It could be a combination of all these different things because your heart, I've talked about this again all the time. Your heart doesn't have eyes. Your heart doesn't know what you're doing. It just knows it's getting more blood flow through it. That's it. So it doesn't really matter what the stimulus is. It matters that you are getting to a certain beat per minute and you're consistently staying at that heart rate. That's how it gets more efficient.
Yeah,
So
just say consistency is like the hardest thing in this whole game.
exactly. And that's kind of where I was going with that is the number one thing is staying consistent and trusting your process. It doesn't need to be a coach's. It doesn't need to be a therapist's. It doesn't need to be something you read online. It's what is the process that you've decided yourself is going to take you to the next level. Now stick with that shit. Trust the people that you've trusted to get you there and continually progress. And you know it's going to go like it's going to be peaks and valleys. It's going to go up and down. You're never going to be a linear line upwards towards your goal. There's going to be pitfalls. But the only way to get to your goal is to stay as consistent as possible.
Well, and I think that's part of like our culture every day now is like we're so into this like I don't know, for me like this self-help or this like biohacking or this whatever you want like proactive culture that's like, oh shit, I just need to be doing something different. I need to be doing this new thing. I need to be ice bath. I need to be taking these supplements. I need to be like part of that gets really toxic, right? Because it's constantly introducing new and different things that I have to be paying attention to. Or this ex coach is doing this. And then I saw, Khabib in that fight doing that. And now I have to add all this shit to my game. It's like, it's a really hard place to be if you're insecure in your fight game or you don't really trust yourself. Right. And so I think that's the root cause of it is this like insecurity we have around the winning and losing and like not really having the confidence in our own process. Right. And it sounds harsh saying that. Like I go through all the same things. Austin, I'm sure you go, well, maybe you don't.
Eh.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but this like insecurity around training and your process, right? I get that around, some of my lifestyle habits. I get this around that. It's like, no, just get 1%. And this is an overdone cliche, 1% better every day. Change one little thing consistently, then work to the next little thing to change consistently. We can't go, from left field to right field and make these big sweeping changes all the time, or you're just getting worse at everything.
Yeah. And quick note before we get to the next one is I see this all the time actually in the performance healthcare space because I would put large amounts of money on the fact that where I'm located down in Scottsdale is honestly it's the mecca of performance healthcare in the entire US right now. There's so many good providers in one localized area that you can't stay open if you suck, right? But
Yeah.
because of that, it's an embarrassment of riches. If you get an opinion you necessarily don't like, there's somebody else over here that's got really good credentials that'll tell you what you want to hear because they want your business, right? That's where you get the guys that they do 4 visits of PT. It's not fixed. Oh, crazy. physiologic healing time's 8 weeks. Of course it's not fucking fixed. And then they go jump off and go get a PRP shot, or they go get stem cell, and then they sit out for 4 weeks and they wonder why it's not better yet. And then they go back and try PT, and it's this never-ending negative feedback loop of you keep jumping around instead of sticking to a plan. Like, I've actually openly told an athlete to their face, like, I would rather you just never fucking listen to me and trust somebody else than come in here and bounce back and forth and back and forth, because you're not going to get better. And I don't do my job for me. I hate to break it to everybody out there. If you're in what me and Alex do, you don't do it for you. You do it for the people you're working with. And the only way, again, for you to get to your goals is to stay as consistent as possible with the plan that you've picked. If you keep changing the plan, you ain't going to get there. I hate to break it to you.
There is the soapbox and the rant that we were looking
Jumped
for
off
this whole time. There it is. Beautiful. Okay. Our next mental mistake that we see a lot of guys making is a pretty easy fix, man, right? And like it falls into another thing that you have to do, but it's like focusing on the game. It's like be a student, right? Not only like listen to coach teach a new technique at practice and like genuinely try it, which I think is another hurdle, but like watch film, look at what the top guys are doing, like create your own mental model of the game of MMA, of your like yellow brick road to a victory by studying, rather than, oh, I just had to be a soldier. All I got to do is go listen and then I'll just do everything that coach says, right? We have to have a combination of that. I'm willing to learn and grow, but I'm also seeking it out myself.
100%. And one of the best ways to do this is to have a plan and a process. I feel like I'm a fucking broken record, right? But if, say you're watching fights, right? You're trying to learn about your opponent. You need to actually have a set, whether it's a template or a set way that you watch these fights. So there's a set way you watch back your fights. You can't just watch it and try to pick up on small little things, right? If you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to miss everything. When I watch fights for study, which I do, every single one of my athletes I work with, I've watched every fight I can get my hands on so that I know exactly how they move, what their tendencies are, and what I can make them better at. I have an entire system and an entire template for what I write down. It's their striking. Okay, what are they doing in their striking? All right, they have this tendency with their feet, this tendency with their shoulders, this tendency with where their head is moving. Okay, boom, check mark done. All right, they're grappling. What do they do when they're against the cage? Are they going to use their feet to control their pressure? Are they going to step in and they're going to use their ankle and they're going to use their hip to control that pressure? Are they only a Greco-Roman wrestler where they're staying up top and they're not relying on pressure? They're waiting for that comeback to go for a throw. All of these different things are lenses you have to look through when watching film. It's not good enough to just watch the film to watch it. There needs to be a purpose behind breaking down film and how you get better at it. Another one, count the kicks, count the punches, count how many strikes are thrown, and you can pick up a lot of shit, right? All you got to do is, all right, you want to get better at throwing kicks? Record every single sparring round and then watch it back. How many kicks did you throw? Oh, this round I threw 6, and the next round I threw 4, and the second round I had way less success. Well, guess what? Throw more fucking kicks.
It's silly that way, but no, like personally, I honestly, I'm such a geek on the sport and like such a fan. I have to watch the first time through. I have to watch it just for pure entertainment. Like I'm watching to see
I do that with pay-per-views.
Right. Like what's the result of this fight? What's the hype? Who's the underdog? All this stuff. I get that out of the way. And then I also like mentally mark really good spots in the fight. It's like, oh, like end of the second round, he hit a sick takedown and finished the round on top. Right. And now as I go back through it, I can remember, okay, let's stop and let's look at all these wrestling sequences. Let's see what's happening. Okay, this is that takedown that I thought was sick. What did he do to set it up? How is he, and you can look at all those tactics and stuff that really like allude to a great practice. Not just this is a technique that he hit, but this is how that works within his system, right? Or that the fighter's process. Because like the better fighters, as you watch them, they have systems of feints and like go-to attacks, right? As we all do. But when you watch the fighters, their feints look the same as their attacks, and then you're guessing, right? It's a high-level guessing game.
It's Izzy.
Right?
You never know if Izzy's going to strike or if he's feinting the entire time.
100%. So, I think creating a process around that, like literally taking notes, right? And I've talked about this on a couple different podcasts. or a couple different of our episodes, not taking notes so you can write shit down and reread them, right? I don't know anybody that rereads their notes, right? Sure. Austin's the exception to every rule that
I like to hear myself talk.
But write your notes down so that you have to stop and actually think through it. Right, it's a different speed of learning, right? And I think that's really what I pick up on, like taking notes. That's why I write everything down, is so that it like ingrains itself into my brain more, rather than I'm going to write this down, so I'll go back and look at it later.
You don't reread your notes? I didn't think I was weird with that one.
Maybe I'm weird about it, but no, I never go back and reread my notes.
Fucking weirdo.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe just listening to it and writing it down once gets me good. I don't know.
Maybe you're just smarter than me. I don't think so, but
well, secretly maybe.
What's our next topic, Alex?
We get out of the mental mistakes kind of model, and we're going to get into some professional deficiencies, right? Which I'm sure if you spent any time at a fight gym, you've seen, right? Yeah. Some guys not taking care of their shit, right? This is the like take care of your shit category, right? Like
being a
we're in this, and we can do the best for people to help them perform, right? That's like our job, is to support their performance in like any capacity that we can, and we're pretty good at that. But I cannot help you get your shit together and go to bed on time. Buy groceries, right? Start there. Buy fucking groceries.
Fair.
Right? And so, and that's our first topic in the like professionalism deficiencies. If you're a professional athlete or an aspiring professional athlete, maybe you're an amateur fighter, eat like an adult. Get a square meal, right? Plan out, these are when I need snacks throughout my day. If you're training 3 times a day and you're not eating in between those training sessions, you are fucking up.
Yeah, this is one I try not to be a hypocrite when I talk about anything. This is one that I struggle with all the time. This is my biggest deficiency in life is my eating habits. But I've consciously tried to get better, and guess what? It's made my life better. Wild. I have way more energy when I have whole food and not just fucking fast food, right?
Craziness.
Wild when I take vitamins and I have fish oil and I take my creatine, that I actually remember more things and I am better throughout my day. It's crazy. Acting and eating like an adult allows me to accomplish more things. If you're an athlete, I don't use my body all day for my fucking job. I don't get paid to go punch a man in a cage. It's wild to me that this is even a talk that we have to have, that you're going to get paid 5 or 6 figures to go step into a cage, use your body as a weapon, yet you don't want to fuel it properly. That doesn't make sense.
No, 100%. Something that we need to take really seriously. And like, again, you're a sport where cutting weight's a real thing, right? Maintaining your weight and being at least knowledgeable around what food should I eat here? What do I tolerate well before practice? Where like those habits, right? That's the things that I think we can talk to, is like the habits around the nutrition and fueling yourself for success. I think when we get into a little more nitty gritty of it, or you want to like a diet plan or a meal plan, like then you're going to have to search out like a registered dietitian, right? Christina Chu is a phenomenal friend of Building a Fighter. We've had her on the podcast multiple times. You can look back and listen to any of those episodes. She's one, funny as hell, right? We always have a great time when she's on the podcast. But 2, she like drops some legitimate knowledge bomb that's like, I've even been sitting there like, why the fuck don't I do that? That's so simple.
And I'm going to drop her, even if you can't afford a registered dietitian right away, her Patreon's fire. Yeah. Like she has a relatively cost-effective Patreon. I don't remember the actual tiered subscriptions, but I believe the lowest one's like $10 or something like that, maybe 20. But and that's monthly, and you get fantastic nutrition advice it's not individualized to you, but it's great guidelines that you can go follow, to where if you don't have the funds to do one-on-one work, that's a great way to get the information you need. Also, sick ass swag. Do you see her new fucking fanny packs? The cross body, yeah. Bro, yeah, that looks sick as fuck.
She's got a cool little logo going on there. The second kind of topic and rant in this place is get yourself in order professionally, right? Like establish an LLC, pay your fucking taxes. Like you have no idea how much stress that will relieve from your life if you have yourself financially in order, right? And I'm not again saying that if you don't, it's a problem. I'm saying that you need to set yourself up in the future to figure it out.
No, right? I'm saying actually problem. As
have it,
son of somebody that does taxes, like it's a fucking problem.
Like if you don't do your taxes, yes,
pay your taxes or you're going to jail. Like
that is a problem.
So, but all of that literally just comes down to being an adult. All right, you have to pay your taxes. Cool. How do I develop a system to make sure that I never forget about that ever? Is it literally just putting something in a Google Calendar 3 weeks before the tax deadline, which I believe, what is that, April 14th?
Is it April 15th? Is
April
it
15th.
having a guy? That's
Yeah.
like
Do you do it yourself or do you have to have a guy?
pay a tax guy, right? For me,
Well,
it's
yeah,
like
I would highly recommend paying tax guy.
it's literally like $150 for me a year,
Mm-hmm.
right? Here's all my shit. Here's all my information. Thank you.
100%. And the other thing is, like Alex kind of touched on it, if you're a professional athlete and you don't have a LLC created around your name, or you don't have some sort of corporate shelter, if you will, for a better tax rate or for being able to write off certain expenses,
Protection of your assets.
protection of your assets, being able to get different discounts on different things, being able to, I mean, it's endless. There's so many benefits of becoming a professional organization instead of a solo practitioner, if you will. So making sure that you go do that thing, it's worth the $200 you pay on LegalZoom to create an LLC in your name, and then you can write off all of your training expenses. You can write off your gas to go to the gym. You can write off your food that you're eating. You can write off your fucking groceries because you're a professional athlete and you have to have top tier groceries to pay. If you're a UFC or Bellator PFL, if you're making enough money that you should be eating very, very clean and you can't afford it, and you don't have an LLC, you're leaving money on the table that you may be able to get back on your taxes later. It's an easy thing to do.
Right. And again, I think it's worth mentioning too, the amount of stress like on a day to day that can alleviate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like one of my biggest experiences within training fighters is like when your personal life is in disarray, whether you're stressing about relationships, stressing about finances, stressing about, you know, your friends and like training partners or what gym I'm going to fight at, like those personal life stressors affect how you fight, period.
100%.
They cannot have no say. They are who you are and you're the person fighting. And so those like, I know we have this like compartmentalizing thing that we like to do as athletes. We think like, okay, I'll just push my personal life to the side and I'll just have a training day. That's so fucking hard to do. And it doesn't exist in a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right. So if we can at least get in a good process to figure our financials out, to figure out our like professionalism status, to figure out like, okay, I have all this organized. And it's again, easy as paying a guy to do it, right? Pay, and it's not a lot, right? Unless you're making a lot of money. The stress that it can remove on the daily is so huge.
Yeah. Find what you're good at, stick to that, and hire out for the rest.
Yeah.
There's a reason why. Have you guys seen our Instagram page? So much fucking better than it used to be. See the website? So much better than it used to be.
Comical, bro.
Guess what? Me and Alex found out that that's not what we're fucking good at. You know who we brought in? Sid. Sid's really fucking good at that. We
Yep.
found a deficiency. We decided, okay, this is worth the expense because it takes away the mental stress on my end. Boom. We're allowed to actually continue to do things at a high level, actually, what we would consider a higher level. And it also takes the stress off my plate. Do it if you can, because it always makes your life better. And moving on to the last one, something that I hold near and dear, I feel like I have to say this at least once a day to some athlete. Go the fuck to sleep.
Yeah,
Go to sleep at a similar time within 30 minutes every single night. Wake up within 30 minutes every single day and get at least 8 hours of sleep if you are a professional or aspiring to be a professional athlete. These guys that are waking up at fucking 7 a.m. and falling asleep at 2 a.m., they're leaving themselves a lot of injury risk. We know, I don't remember the actual number, but I think it's something like 18% that every hour underneath 8 hours of sleep increases your injury risk by some percentage. I think it's 18%. That's a lot. I mean, if you're starting at 100, you're already down to a B, like a low B, if you get one less hour of sleep. You're already down to a D if you get 2 less hours of sleep. I guess not a D, but a low C. I don't know. Never got there. But
yeah, right, bro. C's get degrees. I know the Austin way.
That's not how I operate. But like you don't really have a leg to stand on if you don't do this. This is literally the easiest thing to do that we've talked about all night. Just setting up bedtime like you're a child, right? You don't stay up until 2 a.m. playing Fortnite. I don't know who you just got to hear it, but you do.
Yeah, dude, I don't understand. Like, again, I feel so drained when I don't, obey my own rules on going to sleep, and I literally feel it the next day, right?
Dude,
It's
we
a
stayed up until fucking, what was that, 10? Well, I don't know your time, but I stayed up until 10:15 with Alex. We were playing some VR game on, was that Sunday?
I was
And
crushed on Monday, dude.
and I normally go to bed at 8:30 p.m. every night. I was exhausted the next day, and I only got 6.5 hours of sleep. If that's me and I'm not training all day, I don't have 2 practices a day. That what do these people feel like that they train all day, they put their body through the fucking ringer, and then they do that?
Nah, bro, let's just over caffeinate. We won't feel it.
I also do that.
Right. So again, I think it's just a balanced and a discipline to have, right? Like that's what a lot of this stuff comes down to, is like how consistent and disciplined can you be in the small little routine shit, and then that will add itself up to a bigger success.
100%. And that's really what basically everything that we just talked about boiled down to. It's all small things that make large differences. And the funny
Hmm.
thing is, that's typically what performance is. It's a bunch of small compounding things that make a really large difference when you put them together.
Amen,
So if
bro.
you guys have any questions for us, all of our information is going to be in the show notes. That's going to be Instagram and emails. If you're looking for any strength and conditioning programming, if you're looking for a free workload call, we'll help you figure out your schedule for the better. We also have our strength and conditioning programs. That's going to be our preset options, our membership options, and our custom options. If you're a gym looking to maximize your weight room, we also have a white label fitness program where we will design your fitness program for your gym, for your space, and you can monetize it how you see fit. You pay us a set fee, and we are able to come up with the best plan for the people you work with to make you make money off of that weight room that might be collecting dust. So that is also available at Building a Fighter as well. And as always, Dr. Austin Shane,
Alex Friedman.
and we are out.